He screamed into his regulator, a muffled, silent plea, as the pipeline swallowed him whole, sucking him deeper into its pitch-black throat, violently spinning his helpless body like a rag doll. It wasn't supposed to happen. It was just routine maintenance. Christopher Boodram could feel his heart pounding violently through his wetsuit, each beat echoing louder than the rushing water around him. His breath came short, fast, frantic, every gasp feeling like his last. The powerful suction was relentless, a monstrous unseen force dragging him into the narrow mouth of darkness. His desperate fingers clawed helplessly at the slippery metal rim, nails tearing, gloves shredding, skin peeling away, as blood mixed with salt water in a painful cocktail of agony. But Christopher and 4 other divers were now trapped in a nightmare, a human body forced violently through a pipeline barely wider than his shoulders. He had only minutes of oxygen left. Every frantic heartbeat took him closer to death. This is the terrifying true story of the Paria pipeline disaster. On Friday, February 25, 2022, the Caribbean sun rose warmly over Pointe-à-Pierre, Trinidad. This coastal town buzzed quietly, overlooking the ocean that stretched endlessly. Peaceful, serene, but deceivingly dangerous beneath its gentle waves. 5 divers prepared their equipment aboard a maintenance vessel operated by LMC-S Limited, a local contractor working for Trinidad's Paria fuel trading company. The team consisted of experienced underwater welders and divers who had worked together frequently. Their task seemed straightforward: perform crucial maintenance on a large 30-inch wide underwater oil pipeline, stretching from a marine berth back to shore. Among these divers was Kazim Ali Jr., Yusuf Henry, Frizzle Kurbin, Rishi Nagasar, and Christopher Boodram. All seasoned divers, confident in their skills, completely unaware of the horror awaiting them beneath the waves. They were professional, trained to handle intense pressure, complex machinery, and dangerous scenarios, but none of their training could prepare them for what was about to unfold. Shortly after 2:30 p.m., the dive team entered the water. Working methodically, they moved toward their task at a comfortable depth of 18 meters. Visibility wasn't perfect, but it was manageable enough to get the job done. Their primary mission involved inspecting and replacing equipment on the underwater pipeline. As they approached the opening, something unusual happened, a subtle shift in pressure that divers know to be cautious about. Then, suddenly and without warning, an enormous vacuum erupted within the pipeline. A valve, meant to prevent backflow and regulate pressure, malfunctioned. This catastrophic failure created a terrifying suction, violently pulling the seawater, and anything near, deep into the pipe. In an instant, all 5 divers were caught off guard, pulled toward the entrance, struggling in terror against the massive force. It was too late. One by one, in rapid succession, the divers vanished into the blackness of the pipeline. Within seconds, the divers were thrust into complete darkness, spinning uncontrollably through a twisting metal tube filled with rushing water and debris. Disoriented, panicking, desperately clawing at the slick interior, they tried to stop their slide, but the force was relentless. Christopher, spinning violently through the pipe, fought against panic, realizing his air supply was limited. In pitch darkness, he collided with bends and turns, slamming against metal walls. His mask knocked loose, and his regulator threatened to rip away. He reached out in blindness, grabbing at anything, wires, valves, walls, to slow his deadly descent. The roaring noise of rushing water and trapped air became deafening, disorienting him further. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he stopped moving. He was alive, but barely. Disoriented, his flashlight lost, he fumbled desperately in total darkness. Christopher Boodram stopped violently inside the pipeline, the echo of rushing water fading into distant, eerie silence. He gasped, choking on seawater, his eyes burning, skin scraped raw from collisions with metal and debris. His heart pounded so violently he feared it might burst. "Hello!" he screamed in darkness, desperate to hear a familiar voice. Only silence returned, cold and cruel. He was alone. Or was he? His pulse quickened again as he heard weak groans, muffled cries of agony further down the pipeline. His friends, Kazim, Faisal, Yusuf, Rishi, had also been sucked inside, their bodies lodged in darkness somewhere nearby. Alive or dying, he couldn't reach them. Christopher tried to move forward. Pain shot through his limbs. The pipeline was narrow, barely wider than his own shoulders. His dive gear scraped along the metal walls, making each movement excruciating. He was entombed in steel, deep underwater, with limited air remaining and no idea where he was going. "I have to keep moving," he whispered to himself, forcing his battered body inch by inch through pitch blackness, praying for escape. Minutes stretched into an eternity. Christopher crawled on, dragging himself through oil residue and debris. The darkness around him was absolute. His flashlight was lost, and the only sounds were his panicked breaths and echoes of his friends' weakening groans, growing quieter until finally they stopped altogether. He knew he was running out of air. The compressed gas tank on his back wouldn't last forever, and each breath became shallower, more precious. But as hope dwindled, something miraculous appeared in front of him, a pocket of breathable air trapped inside the pipeline. Christopher lifted his head and inhaled deeply, coughing violently. The air was stale, tainted with oil fumes, but it was oxygen, life. Renewed determination surged through him. He continued forward, each painful inch pulling him closer to freedom. Occasionally he paused, listening again for the others. Nothing. Each silence reaffirmed his worst fears. He was likely the only one left alive. Finally, after nearly 3 grueling hours crawling blindly, Christopher felt the pipeline angle upward slightly. Ahead, he heard voices echoing faintly through metal. Rescuers? His heart leaped in his chest, hope fighting back against despair. Above water, the disaster had finally been noticed. Panic spread rapidly among crew members aboard the support vessel, but inexplicably no immediate rescue effort was launched by the company. Valuable hours were lost in confusion and hesitation, corporate red tape preventing volunteer divers from attempting rescue missions. Desperate family members gathered on shore, screaming in frustration as the company refused immediate help. Eventually, Christopher's own family, driven by desperation, insisted on diving down to search. Their relentless determination finally pierced the bureaucratic nightmare. Volunteer divers entered the water, frantically searching the pipeline's opening. As the rescuers approached, Christopher mustered his strength and cried out weakly. A flashlight beam pierced the darkness. Rescuers had found him. Hands reached in, pulling him from the hellish darkness. Christopher emerged battered, covered in oil and bruises, but miraculously alive. Gasping and sobbing, he tried desperately to tell them his friends were still trapped deeper inside. But it was too late. Precious time had been lost. The fate of the other 4 divers was tragically sealed. The days following Christopher's rescue were filled with grief and anger. Families of the 4 lost divers demanded answers. Why had the company delayed rescue efforts? How had this happened during routine maintenance? Under enormous public pressure, the government of Trinidad launched an official investigation. The findings were damning. The Paria fuel trading company had been grossly negligent. Critical safety valves had malfunctioned due to improper procedures. A deadly Delta P event, differential pressure, had violently sucked the divers into the pipeline. Worse yet, the company had impeded rescue attempts, condemning the divers to death. The investigation recommended criminal charges against the company and its managers. For the families, the ruling offered little solace, their loved ones forever lost beneath the waves. For Christopher, surviving was bittersweet. He was haunted by flashbacks, the sensation of the pipeline pulling him into oblivion, the sounds of his friends dying slowly, trapped and helpless in darkness. He spoke publicly about the disaster, pushing for improved safety protocols, hoping his painful testimony could prevent future tragedies. Yet, survivor's guilt remained an inescapable companion, a cruel shadow he carried everywhere. In quiet moments, he replayed the ordeal, wondering if there was more he could have done, knowing deep down the odds were impossibly stacked against them. Disturbingly, the Paria pipeline tragedy was not unique. Delta P events, where divers are sucked into pipes or intakes due to sudden changes in pressure, have killed divers worldwide. Yet companies often overlook safety, prioritizing profits over human lives, perpetuating deadly risks. This tragedy exposed grim truths about corporate negligence and poor industry practices, but whether those truths would result in lasting change remained uncertain. For the loved ones left behind, justice felt elusive. Stories like Christopher Boodram's should serve as stark warnings. The ocean offers spectacular beauty and endless adventure, but beneath its serene surface, hidden dangers lurk, ready to claim lives in an instant. In diving, complacency kills. Preparation, safety checks, and vigilance are non-negotiable. The Paria pipeline disaster was preventable. It never should have happened, but it did, and 4 lives were lost senselessly. Christopher's survival is a miracle, but miracles can't always be counted on. As divers, workers, and adventurers, we must never forget the price of negligence. If this story impacted you, please take a moment to hit subscribe. Your support helps us tell these powerful stories, raise awareness, and honor the memory of those we've lost. Stay vigilant, stay safe, and thank you for watching.